Hey now, today we're going to take a look at the Bravest Warriors cooperative dice game from Cryptozoic Entertainment. And on a little side note here, I really believe that Cryptozoic has some big issues actually naming their games, in that they like to put the description of the game mechanics in the title. The Bravest Warriors cooperative dice game, the DC Comics deck building game, the Justice League strategy game. Come up with better, more inspiring names, please. Make Bravest Warriors, Mission to the Unknown, something more exciting. Anyways, that's my little upfront rant before we get to the rest of the review. Now, this game is based off of the Bravest Warriors cartoon, and if you haven't seen it, you can watch all of it for free right now on YouTube over at Cartoon Hangover, I think, is the main YouTube channel to see that at, which is kind of a division of Frederator Studios. There are cartoons that are more of an adult bent, not R-rated by any means, but I would say this is actually from the creator of Adventure Time, Pendleton Ward. And Adventure Time is more G-rated. I would say that Bravest Warriors is more PG to PG-13. Still pretty cartoony, and most of it is suitable for any audience, but there's some light swearing and stuff like that. I would say, in my opinion, that Adventure Time is better than Bravest Warriors, because Adventure Time has like this sort of whimsy, innocence, and charm about it that you really don't see in a lot of other cartoons, whereas Bravest Warriors, there's just like an amount of snark in it that shows that they're like in on the joke. Like the characters and the way that they talk and all the references that are in the show, it's kind of like they're aware of their own smartassery, if I can say that. But that doesn't mean it's not a good show. It's a great show, and you should check it out. It's all about the cat bug, is all I'm going to say. Now, this game is, as the title infers, it's a cooperative dice game. You and the other players are working together to get through some of the famous events from the show, like, I don't know, attack by space chickens, or you have events that you have to go through, like the butter lettuce party. And yes, I know, it won't make any sense unless you've seen the show. And so this game is definitely geared towards people who have seen the show before. But in any event, you're going through all these different things by rolling dice, trying to use the abilities of all of, like, the pets that are in the show, like Catbug and Impossibear, and just make it through. And then if you survive all the events or all of the different encounters or get enough points, you're going to win the game. Let's take a more detailed look at how it plays, and then we're going to come back and I'll give you my final thoughts. So this is your typical setup for the Bravest Warriors cooperative dice game. The thing I have to stress here is that when you do the setup, you're each going to get a character card representing a character special ability, and they're all the iconic Bravest Warriors characters, and you're each going to get a bunch of dice, and you distribute the dice as evenly as possible. So in a 6-player game, there should be 12 dice, so you'd each get 2 dice. In a 4-player game, you're each going to get 3 dice, and so on. If it's an uneven number, then just someone has extra dice. The thing is, every character card and special ability is used in the game no matter how many players you have. You have a character card in front of you, like let's say I want to be Catbug, and who wouldn't? But then any other characters that no one chooses just sit there, but you can still use their special ability. So this is a 1-player setup, but it's really the same as any other one. And in fact, even though you get your own dice to roll, you roll the dice communally. They all go into a central pool and are used for the same thing. So this is essentially a solo game that you may let other players watch you play, is what I'm trying to say. But let's move on. So every character has a different special ability. You have Catbug here, who really is the best part of the show. And he lets you use 2 Catbug faces. And I guess I should show you that the dice have different faces of the different animals from the show. So you have Catbug, and you have Impossibear. Impossibear is also a character. And then the other sides of the dice are like the little energy animals that the Bravest Warriors, if you've ever watched the show, can summon from their chest badges. I'm sure that sounds bizarre if you've never watched the show, but there's a dog, a cat, a bee, and a bird. Anyways, you have Catbug here, and his special ability is you can spend 2 Catbug faces to put the bottom card of the Portal discard pile on the bottom of the Portal deck, and that's good because you don't want the Portal deck to run out. And then you have Chris, and Chris can spend 2 bees to reroll any one unallocated die. As you can tell, they use the special abilities that are associated with them. So Chris makes bees come out of his chest plate, so he has bees special abilities. And then you have Wallow, and I'm not going to read off every single one of these. And you have Beth, And you have Danny, who might be my favorite character in the show aside from Catbug, just because he's got the funniest lines. It's very odd. And Impossible, actually, he's pretty good too. The other stuff in the Having game, you have portal cards, event cards, and encounter cards. Now you'll start with a number of portal cards that are going to be dependent on the number of players. So in a 3-player game, I think you start with 4 cards. Now, if you decide to play with standard mode, it's a little bit different. And I do recommend you start with standard mode because it doesn't make a huge difference. You might as well just do it. If you do that, you're going to have an initiative token. And it even tells you initiative token standard mode. And the reason for that is because you're also going to get a hand of event cards. And you wouldn't normally get these in a non-standard game, in the easy mode game. Instead, you just flip every round, you'd flip the top one off the top of the deck. But in standard mode, every round starting with the initiative player, you're gonna have to play one of these event cards face up that could be good or bad. And then every other player can follow you and either play an event card as well or say roll. In other words, start the round. Now the goal of the game is to get to either 20 or 25 points. Again, depending on easy or standard mode, you might as well just go to 25 points, doesn't really matter. And that's how you're going to win the game if you can acquire 25 points from facing encounters, which give you a certain number of points. And you'll face one encounter and some event cards every round. The other way that you can win the game, only in standard mode, again, is if you run out of cards in the event deck. In other words, and in your hands. So you have endured every single event, you will win the game. You can lose the game by running out of cards in the portal deck. Every player has hit points. If they all run out of hit points and are KO'd, then you'll lose the game. And also, if you fail 5 events, whenever you score or fail an event, you'll put it underneath the scored or failed token, appropriately enough. And then if you get 5 failed, no matter what the point values are, you lose the game. But if you eventually get to 25, you'll win the game. Or if you run out of event cards, you'll win the game as well. Now, on your turn, the first thing you do is you'll draw back up to your minimum hand size, if that's applicable. If you use cards from the previous round, I'm talking about the portal cards and event cards. Then you go to the encounter phase, in which case you'll flip over the first card of the encounter deck. And I'll show you a few of these because they're iconic scenes from the show. So you have Ultra Wanker Shin, and you have Butter Lettuce, and Mexican Touchdown, which is fun to say. The Paralyzed Horse, again, this just has to be surreal for people that have never watched the show. Hamster Priest. And we'll end on Gas-Powered Stick. And how these encounters work, one will come out. It'll give you the victory point value up here if you succeed. And then you have to try to get these faces of the dice. So I skipped ahead a little bit, but first you'll go through that event phase that I mentioned where every player is going to have the option of playing an event card down in front of them. And that's another thing that they're going to have to deal with because event cards, like Chris gets zapped, have some negative effects. So it says for each unallocated B at the end of the round, discard 3 cards from the portal deck, and that's bad because you don't want to run out of portal cards. And Zagrax's Fever, character special abilities cannot be used this round. Or let's get a good example of one that's going to force you to use dice or something like that. Well, here we go. You add 1 B requirement to an encounter card this round. So most of these are bad. They'll influence the encounter. So then you're going to go to the roll dice phase, where everyone takes their dice, however many dice they have, rolls them into a big communal pool so that it no longer even matters how many dice you rolled or why you rolled them to begin with. And then you have the encounter, and you must immediately allocate any necessary symbols. So I need a bee, a cat, a bird, and an impossible. So here's my bird, and here's my impossible, and here's my cat, and I have no bees. Well, this is where your portal cards come into play, and also the special abilities. You can start converting dice into other dice that you may need. So this one here, re-roll portal. You can re-roll any 3 dice that you want. Let's see, this one would be very helpful. You can convert 2 cat bugs into a bee, but oh, I've only got 1 cat bug. And this one rerolls 2 dice of any type, and this one lets you convert 2 dogs into 1 bee. So, hey, I have 2 dogs, so I can make those into a bee, and therefore I'll win. And you can use as many of these as you want, as you can. And so therefore, maybe you can convert 2 dice. If you don't have the dice to convert directly into a bee, you can convert 2 other dice into another die and use those to convert into a bee, and so on. And also use the special abilities however you see fit. But again, you have to spend dice in order to do that. Then you're going to get to the end phase where you've either surpassed the event in the encounter or not. If you have, you get to score it. If you haven't, not only do you have to put this in the fail pile and 5 will lose you the game, but also there'll be a fail condition. So for a gas power sick here is that one player must lose 1 die for the rest of the game, which is one of the very few instances where the number of dice you have actually matters. But again, you could just say, okay, the players lose a die from their pool. Anyways, I'm really getting into commentary here. That's really the game. You're trying to get to a certain amount of points, 20 or 25, not fail missions, not run out of cards in the portal deck, not die, or in order to win, get through all the event cards. That's the Bravest Warriors Cooperative Death game. Let's get to my final thoughts. Well, there's not a tremendous amount to say about the components. I like all the artwork, but then again, this is all reused artwork from the show. In this case, it's not a bad thing because it looks really good. It's again the Pendleton Ward Adventure Time type of art style, which looks really good even if you're just taking still images from the show. At least it's not live action still images, which is pretty bad. So I kind of lumped that in with DC Comics deck building game where, yeah, it's reused art from the comic, but it looks really good. The dice, they look colorful and cool, but the thing is, it's imprinted dice instead of etched dice, so if you really play this game a lot, it's going to wear off over time. It's the same problem they had with the first set of King of Tokyo, and you're rolling the dice so much that it's very possible that that will happen, so I wasn't a big fan of that. Also, even though the artwork looks good on the dice, it's small enough, and some of the little cartoon critters from the show, they're like little energy pets, look similar enough on the dice, it's going to be very confusing at first to figure out what is what at first glance, especially if you haven't seen the show and know the difference between them. So, minor gripe, but it is something to be aware of. As far as the theme, and this is going to go straight into the biggest problem that I have with the game, and that's theme plus mechanics. There is really no theme here to speak of. Yes, it's the Bravest Warriors, and yes, you have all this cool cartoon artwork on all the cards, but there is a complete and total disconnect between the theme and the mechanics. You're trying to go through these different encounters that are iconic and from the show, and also the smaller event cards as well, but you never actually feel like you're engaged in heated battle or trying to like dodge some, foe or go through some comical situation. Never once will you ever feel like that. And for people who, like myself, who enjoy the show, who know all the references, who have seen all the episodes, you can still find some smidges of enjoyment by drawing a card and being like, oh, yeah, it's pretty funny, the buttless people. Okay. For people who have not seen the show, even that little bit is lost on them, in which case you have no idea what you're doing, or no idea what you're supposed to be doing anyways, or the activities that you're trying to do. So if you're looking for an example of a disconnect between theme and mechanics, this is like candidate number 1. But even if you can get past that, let's roll right into the mechanics themselves. It's a cooperative game. But at the same time, what I like about cooperative games, especially some of the bigger, more major releases like Pandemic or Robinson Crusoe, is that you each have a distinct role and something that you're good at and that you're going to do and contribute to the group, and you feel like you're doing something significant that the others are not. You're all putting your own personal touch into the game. You do not get that feeling from the Bravest Warriors Cooperative Dice game. Quite the opposite. Everybody feels exactly the same. First off, you're all rolling the same exact dice and trying to get the same exact symbols. Now you might say, well, Nick, you showed in the overview that you all have a different roll card. You're all different Bravest Warriors. Yes, but the fact is, even if you're playing with less players, every single roll card is used in the game. And other players can give you their dice and activate your special ability because it's communal dice. You're all rolling into the same pot. So it's almost like there's just 6 different I think it's 6 total special powers in the game, and everyone can use them, so nobody feels special. Nobody feels like they're actually contributing anything specific to the group. And it's a very odd feeling. And again, this is a disconnect between the theme and the mechanics, which is just huge in this game. And then, even if you can get past that, and if you could really get past those things, I applaud you that I've already listed. But if you can get past that, the end game conditions are really odd because you can try to get to a certain amount of points that varies depending on whether you're playing a normal mode or standard mode. And I suppose you can set whatever point limit you want, really. But you can also win the game by running through the event deck, which leads to some very odd situations because really most of the events are not that bad. Some of them are actually beneficial to you, and knowing when to play them is the tiny bit of strategy that's in this game. But it's really not hard to just mow through them as quickly as possible, and that is most likely how you're going to win the game. It is incredibly possible to fail this game. It's not like completely easy, but if you fail again, it's only because of bad dice rolls and you just don't get what you need. It's very unlikely that you're going to fail because you run out of portal cards or you run out of, you get too many fail points. I mean, and you may even get to a point where if you see that the event deck is about to run out, and you get some encounters, you're like, we can fail these, whatever. Let's just get through the events. We're almost done. It's just very odd. It's one of those anticlimactic scenarios. Again, and I hate to keep harping on this, a disconnect from the theme. Now, for some people, this is definitely a casual game. There's going to be some people who really don't care about modern board games at all and aren't looking for a very deep experience. And I'm sure that those people would get this game and be very happy that they get to see all these their favorite characters from the show, like Catbug. You can play as Catbug. How amazing is that? Okay, for those people, it doesn't really matter. There's some fun dice rolling. There is some fun to be had. You are helping each other. I'm glad that it's at least cooperative. That is in the spirit of the show. And seeing all these cool, fun symbols and reliving all these moments, that's going to be enough for those people. But for me, even though I enjoy the show, I need there to be a game there. And there's just not a very good one here. There's barely a game here. It's... this is one of those games where you could play it solo and have the exact same experience as if you were playing it with the maximum player count or any other player count. And that is very, very odd. I never felt like a Bravest warrior. I never felt like any kind of warrior because it never really felt like I was doing anything. So for me, this is a pass. I'm very disappointed that they kind of wasted the license on this, although it's not entirely surprising from Cryptozoic, but Cryptozoic can make good licensed games. This just isn't one of them.